Howdy diddly do, welcome to ML News. It's a beautiful Monday and we're diving into everything that happened this week. The big talk of the day is a thing called Devin, which I'm going to guess it's sort of a playful adaptation of dev and giving stuff a name, which is really popular right now. They call it the first AI software engineer. This is from the videos they have released and from what it can do, a sort of autonomous programming system in software engineering benchmarks. It does perform pretty well. So from what I can see, Devin is a combination of a large language model that's been prompted to plan a little bit. So it has an input. You can, in this case, hey, I want you to benchmark Llama 2 on 3 different APIs. It will know, it will make a plan of what it's going to do. And it has a few tools available. It has a chat available, obviously, to communicate with the user. It has a console available to run commands. It has a code available, a code editor, and it has a web browser available in order to do lookups in the web. So sort of basic coding tasks where you need to look up some specs and then implement some stuff and then execute the files here are in scope. They also show here that it can autonomously, once it encounters an error, it can autonomously read the error message, enter a print statement, run the program again, figure out what's wrong, and then figure out what it needs to do to fix the bug. I'm also told that it will ask the user at the appropriate time. If it really doesn't continue by itself, it will ask the user at the appropriate time to intervene or to give more information. And in this case, it makes a web app at the end to display the results. This is very obviously a cherry-picked example. I'm not saying it can't do any of these things, but keep in mind that for any of this stuff, the marketing videos are going to be the most shiny, best example, and so on. Several people have tried this. It's not available. It's available sort of in private beta and so on. Several people have come forward and said they were positively surprised by what it can do. But yeah, as you see these marketing videos, keep in mind that they're going to show the nicely working stuff. This is conceivably going to be good for any sort of basic scripting or building, kind of basic workflows. In this case, yeah, you saw like a basic script to evaluate different APIs and so on that can be done autonomously with a combination of web lookup plus kind of iterative debugging of a Python script. Now, needless to say, I can guess the goals of the company is to push this to any sort of software engineering tasks. But think of this less as a coding assistant, but more as a sort of interactive system that uses code in order to achieve its tasks. And sort of the code it writes is a byproduct of achieving the goal, whereas something like GitHub Copilot is an assistive technology for programmers. And the two right now have different use cases, but over time we'll probably see them merge together. So everyone's quite excited about this, even though almost no one has access yet. There are already open source, there's open Devin, it's just a repository, and it already has like 800 stars on GitHub. Oh yeah, they've also done real Upwork jobs. Although that being said, sometimes Upwork jobs are also quite straightforward, right? It just needs someone to implement them. And there's also this release they call MetaGPT's data interpreter. They call it an open source and better Devin, but it's essentially a system that does kind of mathematical reasoning, machine learning tasks, and so on. So planning and so on. It's less flashy, less front-endy, and more of a research investigation into what sort of planning using LLMs in the domain of reasoning, in the domain of machine learning. Something like this is going to be in the background of Devin in some way. If you want to get into the open source world, there are several options available for you. I will link them in the description. All right, I've been reflecting on the Devin release a little bit, and while it is very cool and the people who made it are super serious and are competitive programmers at that, I do feel like the hype is a bit manufactured. For example, there are 2 separate stories in Bloomberg on the same day about them, with pictures from them in their home and so on, or in their offices, elaborate backstories, comments from the investors and so on, that appeared like at the same time as them going out of stealth, which means that they had this prepared beforehand. So they had the whole press lined up beforehand and so on. Probably also the influencers that are now on Twitter saying, oh, I've tried it and it's so great and so on. So what we're seeing is probably a very, very coordinated campaign to kind of manufacture this hype that you're seeing right now. So I feel that doesn't take away from kind of what it can do and that it is something new. But I think we should take that into account and discount a little bit for that when assessing sort of how the world is reacting to that. Be aware and calibrate a little bit for this, just a small scruffy startup and so on. But there's serious money in the publicity. So yeah, completely unrelated to that, but I also found funny, Mira Murati of OpenAI was asked by a reporter what kind of videos Sora was trained on and whether YouTube videos were included in that. And she was probably caught a bit off guard and made a few funny faces that the world now takes as memes. I've already said this, but the whole professional complaining crowd now hating on OpenAI so much as they do recently kind of makes me like OpenAI again. I'm not sure why, but in general, if you just go the opposite way of what the loud cloud chasing crowd does, you're usually correct. So I'm wondering if that's the case here too. In any way, Inflection released an actual custom LLM that they call the world's best personal AI, and their 2.5 model notably comes really close to GPT-4, so they have evaluated it, and I think the prompting they have around it and the application they have around it is to be meant to be sort of, a personal assistant, like a companion LLM-powered assistant that sort of does basic stuff for you. Now, Inflection hasn't been in the spotlight because they did release a good model or because their product is good, which it is, I guess, so nothing to complain there. They've been in the spotlight because they were accused of not actually having their own model, but just being a front end for Claude. So Claude by Anthropic, they released Inflection model was released really shortly after Claude, I think. And then there was this user where they put the same prompt to Claude and to Pi, which is the Inflection assistant, and it output the same thing. So same prompt to two different systems, it output the same thing. And people are like, what? I'm not sure if this person who did it or this person... Oh no, custom query I asked. Okay, that was a big mystery. Like, how come that two different systems that claim to have two different LLM produce the exact same output to the same prompt? Especially one of them is released like really shortly after the other one and has really similar performance to the other one. Okay, the mystery was solved, or at least supposedly solved, when Inflection responded and said they have investigated that this user has actually copy-pasted Claude response into an Inflection chat, into some other chat. Like, they just copy pasted that one and sort of asked Pi about that. Like, I don't know why they did that, but they copy pasted it into Pi. And Pi, other than, for example, ChatGPT, doesn't treat your chats independently, but does retrieval augmented generation over your past chats. And therefore, what it did was just retrieve the pasted answer of that user into the Pi system and reproduce that. So from what Inflection says, they are not just a front end to Claude. They are, in fact, have their own models. And this user simply got this response because they copy pasted over Claude's response in some other chat first. So conversational memory, they call that. I'm not sure, like, it is probably was pretty damaging to their brand, but also maybe it's even good marketing because it highlights their conversational memory feature, right? All right, some good tools. MLX Server is a library that starts up a server with any sort of model from the Hugging Face hub, and it will give you an API that you can target. So a lot of libraries exist that, for example, depend on OpenAI API and so on. And these kinds of libraries here allow you to pull up a model that you can point these libraries at as an API endpoint without having to sort of write the whole API wrapper around these models. Very cool, leads to a lot faster iteration, and playing with these models is super easy. Auto merger is a Hugging Face space that will take any two 7 billion parameter models on top of the Open LLM leaderboard, combine them with a merge technique, and evaluate the resulting model. So if you've never heard of model merging, this is the alchemy of LLMs. Let's say you have I don't know, some base model, some llama model, and you fine tune it in multiple different ways. You can take these fine tunes and merge them together. And there are different techniques to how to do it, but you don't train anything. You just sort of take the weights and you just them together, and that gives you a new model. And the cool thing is that new model is very often even better than the individual models or the base model before, which is really scary because you've never trained that final thing, and you fine-tuned them in separate ways. So why would that work? And there are some hypotheses about why that works, and there are some even theoretical explanations in neural tangent kernel directions and so on. I am too dumb to get any of that, but what I can say is model merging has become a big thing in order to push, and it's almost like an ensemble that you're building with these types of things, and they're usually quite successful. So this space will automatically do that for you and evaluate it for you. So LLM research has become a bit like, you know, drug research, like medical drug research, where they just test every single combination of chemicals, like in a big grid search. You can do that with 7B models now. AICI is a library by Microsoft, prompts as WASM programs. This is a way to enforce, here they say, the purpose of AICI is to make it easy to build and experiment with both existing and entirely new controller strategies for improving LLM generations. That is a little bit abstract, but they have a few examples, and that's pretty cool. So assume you have this prompt. What are the 5 most popular types of vehicles? Usually when you want a certain output format, you will append this to like the prompt here, like return the result as a numbered list, do not add explanations yet, and then people optimize this output formatting prompt things. Now, what if you could just write a program that enforces this style instead of putting this into the prompt? Then that would leave you with only writing the prompt in terms of what you actually want to know, like the content or the task you want the LLM to do. And the output format you leave to that little program that runs and modifies and sort of rejects tokens that are not there, or modifies the output tokens. This is exactly what this system does. In this case, okay, hey, tell the model to generate the prompt string, store the current position in the token generation process, tell the model to generate the list number, wait for the model to generate a vehicle name and end with a new line, and so on. Store the tokens. And this, as long as it compiles to WebAssembly, you can work with that. So this is pretty cool, and probably the future of sort of structuring prompts or making LLM outputs into structured information. Much more reliable than saying, pretty please make me a numbered list, pretty please make me JSON. FAX, or FAX, however you want to call it, is scalable and differentiable federated primitives in JAX. If you don't know, JAX, like PyTorch in a way, I think it's gone a bit out of style to write JAX, but they have some very cool concepts. And FAX here is a framework on top of JAX. So you can distribute your computation graphs, distribute in a way that's still differentiable. Imagine you have a big data center and you want to do computations across all of these nodes while still doing backprop, then FAX could be a library for you. Iveen is a library for understanding and improving PyTorch models via interventions. By interventions, we mean something like go to some intermittent layer and change something. Go to some intermittent layer and freeze some weights or freeze some outputs or something like this. That is what Iveen can do for you. A couple of researchers, including researchers from Google DeepMind and ETH Zurich, have released this paper, stealing part of a production language model, where they can say they can recover the embedding projection layer up to symmetries of a transformer model given typical API access. For under $20, our attack extracts the entire projection matrix of OpenAI's ADA and Babbage language models. We thereby confirm for the first time that these black box models have a hidden dimension of 124 and 248 respectively. We also recover the exact hidden dimension size of the GPT-4.5-Turbo model and estimate it would cost under $2,000 in queries to recover the entire projection matrix. All right, this is really, really cool. Only having API access to be able to not just sort of guess a little bit what's happening, but to determine up to symmetries exactly what's going on inside of these language models is really, really nice. For now, it's just the embedding projection layer that's stealable, or that has been demonstrated to be stealable in this paper, but it's probably conceivable that in the future more and more of these model stealing attacks will become popular as more and more models move behind APIs and as these models become more commercially interesting. Hello, this is Yannick from the future. Just wanted to point out that this paper right here, Logits of API Protected LLMs Leak Proprietary Information from the University of Southern California, was released just a few days after. So this is very probably parallel work that landed on the same or very similar things, explored very similar directions. Now, obviously, Google DeepMind has a lot more reach than the University of Southern California, but also here you can see they say that there is a softmax bottleneck in these API models, and this allows people to discovering LLM's hidden size, obtaining full vocabulary outputs, differentiating and disambiguating different model updates, and even is estimating the output layer parameters. So very cool. I suggest you give both papers a read in case you're interested. Big fun was had this week when apparently some search engines have an indexed version of a non-reachable blog post by OpenAI about GPT-4.5-Turbo. As I said, Google has some cached result, DuckDuckGo has some cached result. That blog post says it has a knowledge cutoff in June 2024, which is in the future. Maybe this blog post went out by accident and they're already preparing the announcement of GPT-4.5-Turbo, or it's just a giant prank. It's just a giant Easter egg. It's just some designer experimenting with some new websites and so on. But the blog post itself, the website leads to a 404, but several search engines seem to have it indexed. So at some point, there might have been something like this online for a brief amount of time. We don't know why, we don't know what, we don't know anything. But it's fun to make up stories. Exclusive, the US must move decisively to avert extinction level threat from AI, government commissioned report says. The US government must move quickly and decisively to avert substantial national security risks stemming from artificial intelligence, which could in the worst case cause an extinction level threat to the human species. A report commissioned by the US government published on Monday. This is among the stupidest headlines ever. And by that, I really mean the headlines. If you read the first paragraph, it's already more nuanced than that, right? Okay, must move quickly and decisively to avert substantial national security risks stemming from artificial intelligence. I guess, yeah, right? Like, there are risks with new and more capable software. There come bigger risks, so that's valid, which could in the worst case cause an extinction level threat to the human species. Note that they don't say that the AI itself could be an extinction level threat to the human species. This could as well be, like here they say, the rise of advanced AI and AGI has the potential to destabilize global security in ways reminiscent of the introduction of nuclear weapons. This is much rather like, okay, humans using these tools in order to do like cyber warfare and whatnot in order to generate more capable weapons and things like this. Yet doomers and their moms come out, oh no, the AGI will take over the world and now even the government acknowledges it. Even if this report were to say that, it would still be dumb. I'm sorry, but no. Yes, new software, new risks, must be alert to that. Powerful software, very powerful risks, must take that into consideration. The worst case is always an existential threat. That's just the worst case in international politics, but it's formulated to suggest a little bit of a thing that probably didn't really mean to suggest. Hugging Face is launching an open source robotics project led by former Tesla scientist. Excellent. This is by VentureBeat. Hugging Face going into open source robotics. Very, very cool. very hugging, very face. They're hiring. Guillaume Cabanach writes, ChatGPT wrote the first sentence of this Elsevier Connect article. Certainly, here's a possible introduction for your topic. What? Okay, yeah. Regenerate response. They even left the prompt in there. Oh, wow. I mean, yeah, this destroys the last hopes of, keeping peer review alive and really arguing why that's important. Peer review as is still going to be important, but the process we have right now for peer review, I think, dies more and more. I think peer review is better to be much more time independent and distributed. Like, just put your stuff on archive, and then the peer review is effectively sort of how many other people use it over time, and not 3 people look at it that don't really have time for it, and if those 3 people see nothing wrong with it, then it gets published, and once it's published, then it's good, and before it's published, it's not good. I don't know, what more evidence do you need? That's going to work less and less in the future. Anthropic releases Claude 3 Haiku, which is apparently a smaller model that goes for speed and efficiency and cost effectiveness. So Claude 3, as you can see right here, compares favorably to GPT-3.5 and to a degree also to Gemini 1.0 Pro, while being cheaper than they are, and they say about 3 times as fast. Anthropic seems to be going really for that long input context game. As you can see, input tokens are priced at about half the price of the other models, while output tokens are slightly cheaper. Cohere releases Command R, which is a 35 billion parameter model that's multilingual and is optimized for things like reasoning, summarization, and question answering. Jan Peleg releases the largest, most powerful open source Hebrew-based model ever trained, Vlogger, a method for text and audio-driven talking human video generation from a single input image of a person. Very cool. Very cool. Building on diffusion models. I guess in the future, something like a newscaster like myself is not going to be super employed anymore. GenStruct 7b is an instruction generation model. This is designed to create valid instructions given a raw text corpus. So people use this to construct synthetic training data for instruction tuning. Again, it's kind of turtles standing on turtles standing on turtles. At some point, you're going to need some real data, but for some use cases, some simple use cases, synthetic instruction data could be useful. And this is a model that will produce it. Google DeepMind announces SIMA, S-I-M-A, scalable, instructable multi-world agent that can navigate within Unity environments. All of that together then gives an agent that you can give text instructions to, in this case, like collect wood, and it can interact with the gaming environment as a human would, like using the keyboard and mouse in order to achieve that goal. The cool thing on top of this is it does generalize to a degree to other unseen environments. What's not so cool is that, again, this comes in the form of a technical report, so shame the SIMA team. Are open foundation models by 01.ai. These are a family of models, 6 billion and 34 billion parameter language models that are trained primarily on English and Chinese. You can check those models out. Sam Altman tweets out that there is a new board of OpenAI. So if you have been here for more than a week, you'll remember the little scuffle they had in the OpenAI board. Nobody exactly knows what's going on, but there is now a new board, and from what I can tell, or people can tell, this is more favorable towards Sam Altman than the previous one. Well, it can't get much more unfavorable than people who fire you, but we'll see what it is going forward. As always, the memes, very good. Where is Ilya? Release Ilya. Ilya apparently, I don't know if that's a meme or whether he really hasn't been seen in a while. I don't know. Pristine places of research have just become the next Kardashians. Oxyglot is a research collaborative, a research collective for open source development of large language models by and for Europe. So this is a conglomeration of various government institutes, open research groups, and other institutions to come together and do joint research on European or Europe-based large language models and Europe-targeted large language models, which I don't exactly know, but multilingual models are certainly on there because Europe is multilingual. Like I can get that, and then mixture of European experts. The efforts of phases 1 and 2 will culminate in creating a sophisticated mixture of dedicated language experts. I'm not super sure if you have to go through all of this super duper trouble, or isn't it just better to throw the whole internet into a giant model? Like, won't that just turn out better? Like, I'm pretty sure GPT-4 is doing just fine in Hungarian. I'm not sure. Some Hungarian person tell me. Lastly, Emad of Stability tweets out that they are using or were using Intel chips for Stable Diffusion 3, which not just for inference, but also for training, which is quite a good shakeup because NVIDIA so far is allegedly having a monopoly on that whole market, and some inference or training being able to be done on Intel chips is a bit of a shakeup because it kind of moves and gives another alternative. Now, the question is whether Intel also has the nice software stack that NVIDIA has that makes it so accessible for people to use their accelerators. But I think we can all agree that general competition in the hardware market for large models is a good thing. All right, that was it for this week. I hope you enjoy all your days. Stay hydrated, and I wish you the best. Bye-bye.